read that in the book of Luke, I think it's chapter 4. You can read what he read. And he said to that group that day, today this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing. I'm the one that the prophet was talking about. Mark did not include that. Mark doesn't give us that. Mark doesn't go to the details. He just points out the situation. And the Bible tells us once he had read and once he had sat down, you might want to turn to the book of Luke and we'll just sort of look at that. And it's Luke chapter 4, verse number 16. After he had sat down, in verse 20 the Bible says, and he closed the book and he gave it again to the minister and sat down. And then the Bible says, and the eyes of all them that were in the synagogue were fastened on him. They were paying attention to him. And he began to say unto them, this day is this scripture fulfilled in your ears. And all bare witness and wondered at the gracious words which proceeded out of his mouth. Now, we want to get to where the real meat of my discussion tonight with you is, and with us is. And they said, is not this Joseph's son? You know, over in the book of Mark it said, is this not Mary's son? And same difference, Mary and Joseph's son. And Jesus responded to them there. He said, surely you are going to say, physician, heal thyself, whatsoever we have heard done in Capernaum, do also here in thy country. What he was saying by that was, you're going to tell me actually take care of yourself before you try to tell us to take care of ourselves. In other words, whatever you say for us to do, you do, make sure you do. And then he said this, no prophet is accepted in his own country. In other words, he is saying to them, a prophet is accepted anywhere he might go, but in his own hometown. You know why? Because you know me and I know you. And that leads me to the thought that I want to discuss with you tonight. It's really one word, familiarity. And all of us have a problem with it. All of us have a problem with familiarity. When we think about this particular situation, why do you think his hometown people who knew it, his own relatives, I'm assuming that his brothers and sisters, by the way, the RCs, that's not COLAs, Roman Catholics, they say that that Jesus didn't have any brothers and sisters. Well, what does your book tell you? Well, they, of course, they just don't, I mean, that's what they believe. But anyway, Jesus didn't have any earthly brothers and sisters as such. But he did have brothers and sisters because they were the same mother and father. They were, but he had a different father. But Mary was only married once. Oh man, don't that shoot you for Mary's only married once, only knew one man. But Jesus was not her product. Actually, he was her product, he wasn't Joseph's product, let me say it that way. He was the seed of the woman. And it had to be so, you know why? Because it said in the book of Genesis, when God speaking to the serpent, he said, her seed will bruise your head. You'll bruise his heel, but her seed, not his seed. Because, you see, he was the second Adam. Well, that's not in my message tonight. I just thought I'd throw that out. Ice cream cake, you know. But when you think about this situation, why did you think that they reacted to him like they did? Have you ever been into I've been traveling and you went by a sign on the highway before you entered the town and said, the home of, and it gave some famous individual. I remember we were going to Texas one time, we went into Arkansas. And when Mr. Clinton was president, it said, the home of Bill Clinton. Then we got on down the road to where he was actually born, and on the sign there it said, don't blame us, we didn't vote for it. I'm not lying, if I'm lying, I'm dying. But anyway, why wouldn't Nazareth, see, he's already got a reputation of being a miracle worker. People are already talking about, why wouldn't they be proud of the fact that Jesus was from their community? He was born there, and he lived there, his parents lived there, he grew up there. Why wouldn't they be proud of that? What do you think? Has anybody got a suggestion?
They weren't believers.
Okay, they weren't believers.
Jealousy.
That's a good answer.
Jealousy.
Jealousy.
Fear of being wrong.
Huh?
Fear of being wrong.
They were afraid they might be wrong, or all of those things probably go into the one word that I want to introduce to you, and that's familiarity. They were familiar with it. Ain't no way you can be who you say you are. We know who you are. Man, I've known you since you was a little. And that's why he said, no prophet without honor except in his own country, his own town. But you see, it's hard to talk to people when they know all about you. And it's hard for them to accept the fact that you're not what you used to be. So here Jesus comes to his own hometown and he announces that I am the fulfillment of this scripture. Yes.
I have a question. At what age did Jesus know who he really was?
While he was in the cradle.
He knew from that point.
Well, he did as Jesus, as God. He knew who he was. And so at what age, I don't know, humanly speaking, I think he always knew, even as an infant. I don't think he had to learn anything, even though he went through the motions of learning. He had to learn hunger, he had to learn thirst, he had to learn pain. He had never experienced that before in a human body. He had experienced it as God, but not in the human body. So the human body allowed him to experience the same things that we experience. But the Bible does say that he grew in wisdom. Now, as Jesus, he grew in wisdom. As God, he already knew. Now, you say, well, that blows my mind. That's God saying. All right? Now, here's what I want to talk to you about tonight. What is a definition of familiarity? And where are we going with this? And I want to get through this because I have a little questionnaire I want to give you. Familiarity. I wrote down the definition. The state of being familiar with, or the state of having knowledge of. I'm familiar with that road. I'm familiar with that area. That means we have knowledge of that. That's one meaning of familiarity. Then familiarity means a forwardness, a friendly or formal way of acting. And it also means an improper friendliness or forwardness. It means that a person would act toward another person improperly. For instance, if you went out, you and your wife went out, then if some other man acted unfavorably toward your wife, that would be an unfamiliarity that they were doing toward your wife. I mean, have you ever had somebody say something to you or approach you and you say, I don't know you? Have you ever had that kind of, that's unfamiliarity. That's people taking advantage or doing something in a forward way that is totally inappropriate. Now, that leads me to this particular thought. The more you know, the more familiar you become. Right? If I'm visiting an area, the more I'm there, the more familiar I become with that area. If I study a particular subject, the more familiar I become with that subject. If I get to know you and I'm around you, the more familiar I become with you, and vice versa. But familiarity is a good thing in some respects, but it can be a very bad thing as well. And I'm going to show you something tonight. Familiarity does three things. And the first one is familiarity breeds contempt, or it causes a lack of respect. Now just think with me for just a moment. These folks were with who? The people in this story were with who? Christ. Did they know Him? Were they familiar with Him? Was He familiar with them? He came there with no forwardness at all. He came there with no familiarity at all in a bad respect. He wanted to share with them the things of God. But how did they react? They said this. Who is this guy? Is this not Joseph's son? Is this not Mary's son? Wait just a minute. Who do you say it was? Who was it? Who was He? And who was Jesus? He was God. But they only saw Him as Joseph's son. Their familiarity with Him, they had known Him since the time He had grown up in Nazareth for all these years. They had known Him as Joseph's son, and their familiarity caused them to be contemptible toward Him. They said, how can this man have all this wisdom and talk about that? Why, this is Joseph's son. In one of the other Gospels it says, how did this man know letters? He didn't even go to school. Can you see any contempt there? Can you see any disrespect there? Can you see any just putting putting this guy down, putting him down on the low level. Who does he think he is coming in here telling us that this is Scripture is fulfilled in him? Who does he think he is? Why, he's Joseph's son. He didn't even go to school. Now, I'll tell you this, if a total stranger walked in there that they didn't know, they probably wouldn't have never said that. Let me give you an illustration. Did Jesus go to any other towns and they treat him like this? No. But familiarity breeds contempt. In other words, contempt means that we don't accept or give the proper respect. We don't give the proper appreciation for it. They held his person in contemptible. Who is he? He's Joseph's son and Mary's son. A carpenter! A carpenter's son. He's no teacher. He's no leader. He's just a carpenter's son. They were in contempt of his message as well. Turn to the book of Matthew chapter 13 and verse 54. Matthew 13 and 54, I got it here. Look at what it said in verse 15. When he was come into his own country, this is the same story that you find in Mark 6. When he came into his own country, he taught them in their synagogue insomuch that they were astonished. They were astonished and said, Whence hath this man this wisdom and these mighty works? Is not this the carpenter's son? Is not his mother called Mary? And went down and talked about his brothers and sisters. And look what he says down in verse 56. Whence then hath this man all these things? Look at verse 57. And they were what? Offended. They were offended in him. They were offended by it. And yet they were familiar with it. And familiarity many times breeds contempt. We take things for granted. By the way, this is one of the greatest safety issues in industry today. You take a new employee, put them in a new job, and you tell them what they're supposed to do. Anybody that's ever trained a new employee here? Yeah. And they, most of the time, for the first 3 or 4 days or weeks, they'll do pretty good, right? But then after a while, when they get blank with the job, familiar with the job, then they start learning to cut corners like the person who taught them. Right? I learned that when I was in the military. I first went in the military. I mean, if somebody, I didn't know what their rank was. If they sneezed and told me to sneeze, I sneezed. But then I became familiar with it. We call it learning the ropes. So these people were so familiar with Jesus that they just said, "You offend us coming in here telling us all this stuff." Familiarity breeds contempt. I would spend a little more time there, but I don't have any more time. Familiarity, number 2, breeds complacency. You get complacent. And this is where in in industry, so much is given on people being complacent. Somebody comes in and does an inspection, and they find things that are not right. Why? What is the excuse? Most of the time, what is it? Complacency. Complacency. I got a definition. I read this definition today this person gave about complacency. Complacency is a blight that saps energy, dulls attitudes, and causes a drain on the brain. The first symptom is satisfaction with things as they are. The first symptoms of complacency is being satisfied with things as they are. The second is rejection of things as they might be. First is you're satisfied with the way things are. Second is you reject what could be. That's complacency. Good enough becomes today's watchword and tomorrow's standard. I've heard people say, well, that's good enough for government work. Have you ever heard that? Good enough. But familiarity says complacency is not good enough. Not good enough. Complacency makes people fear the unknown, mistrust the untried, and abhor the new. Like water, complacent people follow the easiest course. Water takes the course of least resistance. And that course is always what? Uphill or downhill? Downhill. They draw false strength from looking back. So complacency is a bad thing. Jesus came to his own town, announced to his people that knew all about him. They were familiar with him, and when he told them what his ministry was, they were complacent to stay like they were. Familiarity breeds contempt, and it also breeds complacency. I'm satisfied with the way things are. Don't upset the apple cart. Don't do anything that's going to cause a problem. We get settled into a routine. We're happy as we are outwardly. Lukewarm, as far as the Lord is concerned. Don't have no more zeal, have zeal. Complacency will kill your zeal for God quicker than anything. See, these people, Jesus do whatever he wants to do. Just don't do it here. Just don't bother me. Let me show you something here in the book of Mark, chapter 6, and this is basically true. Look at verse 5 of Mark 6. And he could there do no mighty works. Did you get that? He could there do no mighty works. Familiarity binds the hands of God to where He cannot and will not work. Now listen to what it says. He could there do no mighty works, save that He laid His hands upon a few sick folk and healed them. And the Bible says this. He stood by and shook his head at how great their unbelief was. Of all the people on the earth who ought to know Him and believe in Him, they didn't. They had great unbelief. And why is that? They were so familiar. They knew all about Him. They'd watched Him. They'd seen Him. And because of that, they didn't take Him serious. Can you imagine the God who created the world and all that we see and all that we don't see? The God that saves us from sin? Can you imagine Him having His hands bound so He could not do any mighty works there? Do you think Nazareth needed any mighty works done? Said there's a few sick folk there. I bet there was a lot of sick people there. You reckon there's anybody there that had a problem with any other kind of problem, physical problem, financial problem, life problem? You think there's anybody that lived in Nazareth that needed God at all? I think there probably was. And the interesting thing, their help was present and lived among them and came there and wanted to do something about it. But their familiarity with Him wouldn't allow Him, because they did not give Him the proper respect, the proper faith, belief that they should have. Wouldn't allow them to believe Him. Wouldn't allow Him to do the works that He wanted to do. Now the third thing familiarity does, not only does it breed contempt and complacency, but it brings contentment. Familiarity brings contentment. There's a singing group known as U2. Have anybody ever heard of U2? They sing a song, and one of the words, some of the words in this song is this: I've climbed the highest mountains, I've run through the fields, I've run, I have crawled, I have scaled city walls, but I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Now, when you think about contentment, contentment is being happy with what you have. I don't have time to go there, but you might you might study for your own good. Philippians chapter 4, verse 11, 2 Timothy chapter 6, verse 6, Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 5. All this talks about contentment. How do we have contentment? You know, Paul said this. He said he had learned to be content. I learned that whatsoever state I'm in, therewith to be content. You can't buy contentment. You can't take a Bible course and contentment comes up. The only way you can be content is to learn to be content. You have to learn it. It's like learning the multiplication table. It's like learning the alphabet. You have to learn it. Now, how do you learn it? You can't learn it by rote memory. You have to learn it by experience. Paul said, I learned that in whatsoever state I'm in, whether I'm well or sick, whether I'm blessed or not, whether I've got money or I don't, or whether things are going my way or they're not going my way, whether my family likes me or my family don't, whether the devil is after me or the devil ain't after me. I've learned that whatsoever state I'm in, therewith to be content. Contentment. What is contentment? let me ask you this. Finish this statement. If I could have blank, I would be content. What would you put in that blank? There are people who would say, if I had $1 million, if I had a wife, if I had a husband, if I had a new car, if I had this, I had that. Let me say this. There's a whole bunch of people in this world that's got exactly what I just listed along with other things. And they're not content. What makes you think, or what makes me think, I would be content?
For content, complacency, really, it's not much difference.
Do what?
As far as contentment and complacency, they just fit right together.
No, contentment is a lot different than content. It's fine to be complacent with your contentment, but you can't be complacent in your contentment. In other words, you can't be, or let me say it the other way, I just said the other way. You can't be content with your complacency. In other words, I can be content, and let me give you this statement. This is it, this is contentment, real contentment. Having no higher ambition than to belong to the Lord and to be at His disposal. That's contentment. If there's any other thing that would go in that slot than this, things do not bring contentment. Only the Lord. See, when I am complacent, I may be complacent. Complacency allows me to stay where I am. But contentment allows me to be content where I am, be satisfied where I am. See, I may be complacent and still be miserable and be miserable. In other words, a person, well, case in point, the very people we're looking at, they were complacent. They were satisfied to stay where they were and like they were. Their complacency allowed them that. But then they weren't content where they were because they were constantly asking for something else or looking for something else. So contentment causes us to be content where we are. You see, Paul said, I've learned that in whatsoever state, and that's a state of mind, state of affairs that's around, therewith to be content. I'm content with it. Discontentment causes me to look horizontally out here. Contentment causes me to look vertically. Paul was in prison. Was he content to be in prison? Yes, he was. He realized that he was there for a purpose. He was there because he was in the will of God, and God wanted him there. So when we think about familiarity, how does that come down and relate to you and me tonight? What do we get familiar with? We get familiar. You get familiar with your job. You just go through that. And sometimes people do their job, and when they get at it, they've been at it so long and doing it so long, they get to the point that it gets boring and you want to kill half the people you have to work with or whatever, you know. What was it you got so familiar with it? Are you looking at it like, number one, this job pays my bills. This job puts food on my table. This job allows me to exist on this earth, right? This job feeds my family. This job gives me an outlet to be a witness. I'm here by divine appointment because God wants me here. And then you look at it in an altogether different way. It's hard to believe how you feel if you went in one day and they said, we no longer need you, you've been terminated. Thousands of people have had that experience. Right, Mom? But you appreciated God when it's through that. I don't know all of your problems with your God, but I tell you what, I know somebody does. Aren't you glad that He does? Aren't you glad He's long-suffering when you're not? So, being content. I read a story one time, and it was given by a missionary that was on the island of Tobago. And the island of Tobago, if you know anything about it, it was a leprosy colony. Primarily, lepers live on that island. And this missionary went to a meeting one day, and they were singing. And the missionary asked if someone in the congregation would like to have a song they'd like to sing. There was a woman sitting in the floor in the back with her back to the missionary. And she turned herself around on the floor and raised a hand that had no fingers that already fell off. She had no ears, she had no lips, and she had no nose. And she raised her hand up and she said, "Could we sing, Count Your Blessings?" That's contentment. Only the grace of God allows us to be content like that. And when you're consumed with God and His will in your life, regardless of what state you're in, then that's contentment. And it's interesting. I don't know whether you've studied or not, but Jesus, listen to me, Jesus never went back to Nazareth again in these earthly ministries. He never went back. Can you imagine having one opportunity and then having the Lord of glory say He couldn't do any mighty works there because they were just too familiar with it? Now I've got a little thing I want to use. Wilson, you come and pass it out. You can take this and take it home and do with it as you please. You don't have to give it to me or back to me or whatever. I'll read these questions to you. It has to do with familiarity. And I want to sort of explain what each question means. And I want you to be honest about this, because it will affect me. If I'm honest about mine, then it'll affect me. But the way you answer will be up to you. I think if I were you, I would suggest that you answer this and just tuck it away somewhere. And in those areas where you have problems, then work on those problems and try to get your numbers up. Yes, sir.
You know, you told us that he never went back to Nazareth. Why do you think the people of Nazareth thought of him after he started this?
I really don't think that their attitude changed.
You don't think so?
Because they were so familiar with it, they couldn't accept. They couldn't believe it. In other words, they could not believe that a person of his stature, who he was, who they knew him to do, could be what they were here. They just couldn't do that. Now, it says here on a scale of 1 to 10, rate yourself on the following. My familiarity of the Bible is. Now, I'm not asking you how much you owe or how much you know about the Bible. What I'm asking you is, how familiar are you with it? How mundane, how commonplace. If you misread the Bible, does it disturb you? If you give more time to other things than it, does it bother you? You can read everything else, but you have no time for the Bible. You can spend time on the internet or whatever, but you have no time to read the Bible, no time to study. How would you rate your familiarity? Let me ask you this. How would you rate the familiarity of the Nazarites, Jesus' own time? I'd give them a big fat 10, wouldn't you? Where would you rate yourself? How familiar? You know, I'll be honest with you. For America, the familiarity of this book is if I have 1,000, I don't have to give them 1,000, but at 10, people throw their Bibles around. They just treat the Bible like it. Did you know this is the only eternal thing you're ever going to hold in your hand while you're on this earth? And people disrespect the Bible. They don't want Bibles. They don't want nothing to do with Bibles. Used to be, when we were in the, growing up, you didn't fool with the Bible. Man, you could do what you wanted to, see or throw back the catalog and all that stuff. But I'm telling you what, you didn't respect the Bible. Secondly, do I have some contempt in my life? Do I? Now, familiarity breeds contempt. Are you so familiar with things that you just, some things and some people, is there contempt? In other words, I don't want nothing to do with that. I want nothing to do with that person. I don't want nothing to do with that situation. You know where I'm at? What I'm saying there? And what level would that be? What would that be? A 3, a 2, or what? My excitement level about the things of God is what? How excited are you? See, these people weren't excited about the things of God. My goodness, can you imagine Jesus stood in the midst of them and said, this day this scripture has been fulfilled. And they had been waiting on that for 700 years. They had been waiting on that for him to come, according to the book of Isaiah. We've been waiting long in that, but Isaiah, where he's reading from, was that long. My complacency level is what? How complacent are you? And that's not for somebody else to judge, that's for you to judge. It's that. How much of my life is affected by my complacency, especially spiritual things? How much of my life is affected by just being complacent? I'm complacent, I'm satisfied like things are, I'm just, don't rock the boat, don't upset anything. My contentment level is what? Where is it at? And then how important is my contentment level tied to my being a good servant for Jesus Christ. In other words, am I more content when I get money, unexpected money in the mail, or when God shows me a nugget in the Word of God when I'm reading? What is my contentment level with spiritual things over physical things? You see, things cannot bring us contentment. And it can bring you happiness, but it can't bring you joy. Joy is an inward condition and depends on our relationship with the Lord. Happiness is an outward condition and depends on the circumstances around us. Two different things. Has the images I have painted, these are really important here. Has the images I have painted by my life and actions so distorted who you are, who God is, that if the world was looking, they could not see the real you, which is God? Let me ask you this. If we went to this story of Jesus back at his hometown, and if we just looked at the people there, would we see God anywhere in that story? I wouldn't. You know why? Because they was painting a picture of God that was so abnormal, so wrong. What about my life? How is my life? What kind of picture am I painting to the world around me? What kind of a testimony am I giving to the people around me? My children, my grandchildren, my extended family, my church family, my neighbor across the street or down the street. What kind of an impact, what kind of picture are they getting from God, from me, of God? Because, you see, if I'm complacent and them seeing me, then I won't care whether they're seeing the Lord or not. Have I changed the true reflections of you, and you, by the way, as God, to fulfill my own design? In other words, have I changed the real picture of God to reflect my portrayal of God? And thus, by doing that, I'm making God what I want Him to do. So these are some probing questions, but they are worthy of our looking into. And just ask yourself and pray that God will help you to, I sort of say it's 4:10 on an hour, but you may not want to sell it. You want to be as low as you can. Okay? All right, I hope that it's been helpful to you tonight. I don't want to get, can I just take just a minute to say this? I don't want to get so familiar with preaching and with doing services that it isn't what God wants me to do. I mean, after 50-some years, if a man can't stand up and preach a sermon, just all because he's done it for so long. He's so familiar with everything. But that's not my desire. I don't want to get so familiar with God that I drag Him down to my thoughts and my personality and my being. He's got to stay where He is. I've got to leave Him on the throne. Father, thank you tonight for your blessings. Thank you for your word. We pray that the Holy Spirit will speak through the words tonight to my heart first, Lord. And I thank you for what you've already showed me. I pray that I will do better, that I'll seek to grow closer to you and be better at what you want me to do. I pray that for the same for every person in this building, every child of God. Thank you for your love. Dismiss us now by your grace. In Jesus' name, Amen.
Amen.
Sign the prayer letter before you leave, if you will.